So, have you ever actually tried to explain how your company works to a brand new employee? You know the drill. You sit down, grab a whiteboard marker, and try to sketch out a nice, simple workflow. But give it 5 minutes, and that clean diagram, yeah, it looks like a completely tangled bowl of spaghetti. You've got all these weird exceptions, unwritten rules, and of course, those random tasks that Bob in accounting somehow handles through a mysterious spreadsheet. Honestly, trying to document these complex or broken workflows is a lot like trying to draw a map of a totally chaotic city where the streets are literally constantly moving. It's a massive headache. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating 2026 academic review by researchers Schwam Betancourt and Sergio Guerrero. Their work looks at exactly how artificial intelligence is stepping up to map out these complex business workflows, hopefully getting us away from those messy whiteboard sessions for good. They dug into how large language models are completely transforming the way we build business process models and, really, what that all means for the future of how organizations operate.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. We've got a great chronological journey mapped out for today. First, we'll hit the core process modeling problem, then the rise of LLMs, the hallucination catch, fixing AI with RAG, and finally, the future of workflows.
All right, Section 1, the process modeling problem. Let's talk about why these workflows are so incredibly hard to map in the first place. So before we even bring AI into the mix, we have to acknowledge that documenting workflows manually is just exhausting. It is cognitively demanding, it drains your time, and honestly, by the time human analysts actually finish a map, the operational realities on the ground have probably already changed. Now, to try and bring some order to this chaos, the business world relies on something called BPMN, or Business Process Model and Notation. You can basically think of it as the universal map legend for business. But here's the crazy catch. BPMN has over 200 different graphic symbols. 200! And even with this wildly detailed visual language, analysts still struggle to capture the messy, real-world ambiguity of how a company actually gets things done. The notation is perfectly rigorous, sure, but human communication, yeah, not so much. And that brings us to Section 2, the rise of LLMs, and this ongoing quest to somehow automate these tedious process maps. Because manual mapping is such a massive pain, researchers have literally spent years trying to automate it. The dream was a system where you could just describe your business in plain, everyday English, and the data brilliantly illustrates what happened next. For the longest time, older, non-generative AI approaches just kind of bumped along with minimal growth. But then, boom, there is an explosive, undeniable paradigm shift right around 2024 and 2025. Researchers practically abandoned all those older methods, pivoting hard toward generative AI and large language models to finally crack the process modeling code. Now, the core difference between those older methods and the new ones is absolutely huge. Earlier natural language processing methods basically functioned like rigid train tracks. They relied on these manual, heavily rule-based pipelines. If your text didn't perfectly match their pre-programmed rules, well, the train just derailed. Large language models, on the other hand, are way more like off-road vehicles. They're super flexible, they're data-driven, and they don't need explicit grammatical rules to function. They can plow right through messy, unstructured, completely open-ended text and still somehow extract the core business logic. But how do they actually pull that off? Let's demystify this AI black box right here. LLMs do not just magically draw visual diagrams out of thin air. It's actually a multi-step pipeline. Step 1 is prompt engineering, where the AI extracts text based on very specific instructions. Then Step 2 is absolutely crucial. The AI writes out an intermediate structural code. Think of something like a JSON schema or a highly specialized domain language. Finally, in Step 3, a totally separate deterministic program takes that intermediate code and renders it into the visual BPMN diagram you actually see. So basically, the AI builds the skeleton and the software draws the skin. But, just when it seems like AI has completely solved the headache of business mapping, we hit a wall. Welcome to Section 3. The hallucination catch. I really want to read a direct quote from Betancourt and Guerrero here because it just hits the nail on the head. They wrote, "Automatic generation does not necessarily equate to organizationally meaningful modeling." Let that sink in for a second. Just because you force an AI to generate a visually correct model in one single shot absolutely does not mean that model actually reflects the day-to-day reality of your business. So The crucial point we need to make here is the difference between syntactic validity and semantic correctness. And AI is genuinely fantastic at syntactic validity. It knows exactly how to connect those 200 BPMN symbols perfectly without breaking a single notation rule. The model looks structurally sound. But it fails completely at semantic correctness. It hallucinates critical business logic, it flat out invents steps, or it completely misses these vital implicit dependencies. To use our earlier analogy, the AI drew an absolutely perfect map, but it drew a map of the wrong city. So why exactly does this happen? Why do these one-shot AI generations fail so spectacularly in real corporate environments? Well, it's mainly because organizational knowledge is just naturally fragmented. The real truth of a process doesn't live in one neat little document, right? It's scattered across emails, chat logs, dusty old manuals. Plus, employees operate on implicit domain assumptions, things they just know to do but literally never bother to write down. Different departments use entirely different terminology for the exact same thing. And maybe worst of all, a single AI prompt totally ignores the collaborative, iterative negotiation that humans naturally go through when trying to actually agree on a process. Which brings us to the ultimate solution in Section 4, fixing AI with RAG, our navigational GPS. If large language models are incredibly powerful off-road vehicles, right now they are driving entirely blindfolded. They need a navigational GPS, and that is exactly what researchers are proposing with RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. Instead of just asking a generic AI to guess how your onboarding process works, RAG steps in right before the AI answers. It retrieves your company's actual, highly specific external data. We're talking your context manuals, internal glossaries, strict compliance regulations, and it injects all of that directly into the prompt. It forces the model to use your actual ground truth, completely preventing those blind guesses. And this whole concept builds into an entirely new, highly effective workflow. The researchers argue that combining RAG with a human-in-the-loop approach creates this amazing continuous refinement cycle that actually works in practice. First, the AI retrieves those organizational guidelines. Next, the model creates an initial structural draft. But crucially, it doesn't stop there. Human experts step in, look at the draft, validate it, and provide critique. They might say, hey, wait, you completely forgot the compliance check here. Finally, the AI takes that feedback, iterates, and refines the diagram. It perfectly mirrors the actual conversational negotiation of real-world business modeling. And now we've arrived at our final stop, Section 5, the future of workflows. What do these academic findings practically mean for business analysts? The researchers summarize a massive shift that needs to happen here, moving us from the really fragile tools of today to the highly robust tools of tomorrow. Think about it. Currently, AI tries to do everything in one single shot, but the future? The future is iterative. Right now, AI relies on isolated text inputs, but the future absolutely relies on RAG-enhanced, continuously updated context. And perhaps most importantly, the current approach tries to directly automate the human analyst entirely out of the loop. The future approach, though, recognizes that the AI's true role is actually as a human-in-the-loop assistant. It does the heavy lifting of all that tedious BPMN syntax, while the human guides the actual semantic meaning. It's a real team effort. Which leaves us with a pretty critical question to consider as these technologies rapidly evolve. As generative AI becomes increasingly context-aware and deeply embedded in our daily operations, will AI eventually map your entire job out of existence? Or will it simply become the ultimate co-pilot, helping you draw a much, much better map of your organization? Definitely something to think about next time you reach for that whiteboard marker. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.